Wow, today's guest is quite phenomenal and really leading the charge when it comes to the cannabis industry and normalizing that as a form of therapy. It is very near and dear to our heart, and the healing that we've seen within our own personal lives and people that we truly care about. And what she's done with her nonprofit and showing up for the realm of caring really is something that we had to showcase here on The Elevated Life, because we're all about lifting up leaders who are making a massive impact in the world. I feel like emotional. I'm literally about to cry right now, which never happens, but I just feel like I know how much heart and soul and passion you put into the work that you do to try to just help people. That at the end of the day is really what the Elevated Life is all about, is educating to help people stop suffering and just find a bit of hope in their journey of healing and transformation and self-discovery. So welcome to the show. I'm already crying.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. That was a beautiful intro. I'm like getting teary-eyed too already.
So thank you so much for the work that you do. Can you share with our elevators what it is that led you to the realm of caring? Because you don't just show up as a leader to make a difference and help people if you haven't suffered in your own realm. So how did you even get into this world of cannabis therapy?
Sure. Well, thank you for asking. And so I started, I became introduced to cannabinoid therapy when I had first moved from the East Coast to Colorado. I took a job as a ABA therapist while I was in receiving my master's in international human rights. And so I knew I wanted to get into nonprofit work, but I was also working with autistic kiddos on the side. And one of the kiddos that I worked with, she wasn't autistic, but the therapy worked for her. And she had actually moved out to Colorado to access cannabis for her seizures. And that was the first time I had actually witnessed a child use cannabis as a medicine and find a quality of life and find, a life, through the medicine. And then while I was also in school, I had this opportunity to take a course called the International and Domestic Consequences of the Drug War. And through that, I got to have this great human rights lens on what happened with the drug war and, where we need to move as a country to repair those damages. So while I was doing that, the mom of the girl that I was providing therapy for, she was a volunteer for Realm of Caring. It was 2013 at the time, almost 2014, and she was helping to get them started. And so I had known about Realm of Caring for a long time, but it wasn't until I took a little detour into education, I really fell in love with educating. But then I had my son, and I realized education is kind of no place for a quality of life as a mom when you want to spend time with your new baby. So I knew I wanted to get back into nonprofit work and find that work-life balance. And sort of serendipitously, a job was posted for Realm of Caring. And so I jumped at that, and that was in 2019. Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's beautiful and it's cool. It almost seems like your journey has been sort of divinely inspired. It's like you meet this person and they introduce you to this topic or to this other kind of person, and here comes this other person to just sort of guide you. And it's so fascinating. I feel like when you get in the work of caring for people, when what you do is definitely in service of others and in educating people and getting them to understand things, a lot of times we are divinely guided. It's not normally the direct path that we think we're going to be on. I know with our own journeys, it's just like, how did people ask us, like, how did this start? And it's like, oh my gosh.
It started by me trying to get you to work in the hair salon with me.
That's definitely how it started.
I mean, like, we would have never guessed that we'd be here on this path educating in this capacity.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, the question that always comes up, why is it that you think cannabis is illegal?
There's a lot of racism involved if we go back, because, if we go back into our history as a country, cannabis was in tinctures way back in the day. And then it was just how, looking to point the fingers at somebody, looking to increase the rates of those who are incarcerated. And, there's so many nuances involved, but a lot of it is racism, I believe.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because, when I've delved into the history of it, because for a long time, Chris and I were like, we're never going to do drugs ever. Like, that's, our parents did them. No way. We're not doing drugs. And as we got into our mid-20s, we started like asking the question, but like, why is it illegal? Just that same question. Where did this come from? And as you mentioned, the racism, marijuana was a made up term from what was actually called cannabis to kind of make it feel like a Mexican rape drug. And that is where a lot of that, racism started. And what's even more fascinating is there was a paper mill that wouldn't switch over to hemp, and they made hemp illegal so that they didn't have to change their business and processes because they had the money, the power, and they were printing the newspaper. So there's a lot of interesting facts into how did it get to this point. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, because that's the question that everybody eventually leads to.
But like, why does it kill people? No. Well, then why would it be illegal?
It's such a fascinating history. It's so wild that, as you mentioned, for years and years and years, especially in Chinese medicine, cannabis was used for everything. It was like it was in all the stuff you can find. You can actually find the old bottles of it where it says like cannabis, and it looks so cool because the old timey bottles. And you're thinking like, wait. So people figured out to use this, figured out that it helped them, and then like, where are we now? And I think that there's such a pull right now going to more natural medicines, which are called alternative now. So weird, because but it's so amazing because I feel like a lot of us have figured out that the tools that we have currently, they don't do it. They don't meet our expectations. The side effects are too heavy. It's killing you. And it's tough to take medicine for one thing and then to only find yourself in a deeper hole down the road. And so I want to ask you, how do you think cannabis will end up changing sort of the future of wellness and the way we think of like mental health and that? Because I've seen it play such a role in so many different healing modalities.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that we're already starting to see the shift take place just for individuals who can, own their own medical autonomy and just take control of their medical journey. It is a human right at the end of it all, right? It's our human right to make those decisions about how we go on our health journeys. And I think we're going to see a greater shift for people using this. And we've seen it even at Realm of Caring, where it used to be a last resort. It used to be, I failed 20 pharmaceuticals. I did the therapies. I did the surgeries. And this is my end of the line. What else is left? Oh, let me try cannabis. And then those individuals go on to live for 10, 20 years afterwards. And but now what we're seeing is a little bit of a shift where people are looking to cannabis first. So we have some parents who even call when their infants or young children get diagnosed with whatever the condition might be, and they want to look at a natural medicine before they go with the pharmaceutical route that could leave their children nonverbal, catatonic, the list goes on and on as far as side effects. But then also we're seeing at the other end of the spectrum are 65 plus individuals who come to us who also say, I've tried everything. Now my doctor wants to put me on opioids too. I want to have a quality of life. I still see myself as young. I want to be active with the grandkids. And so then they're looking to cannabis, and where they say, I smoked pot once when I was in high school, and that's my only experience with it. And it's like, okay, now they're looking at it as therapeutically, and how can we help them with that journey? But I hope that only continues to improve. And with this, recent what's happening at the federal level, it's for the movement to Schedule 3. It's the first time that we're seeing recognized by the federal government that cannabis has some kind of medical use if this goes through. And so that's going to also help shift that mindset where people are thinking of it more as a medicine and less so as just, a street drug or whatever terms they want to use.
A gateway
drug. A gateway drug. Yeah.
I love what you're doing because, it's been such a pivotal piece in some of the healing work that we do, that we've even hosted retreats in Colorado for that very specific reason, to help open and break down the walls and allow more vulnerability and open connection. What we find is the level of deep conversation and consciousness that happens within that community with sharing that plant medicine is like the most healing and beautiful, whereas without it, everyone, it's like, taking your first drink of alcohol when you go out and then you loosen up. Well, we don't want to put toxins and poisons in our body. We want to find a more holistic, natural way to open up. And that's been such a beautiful thing. And, you know, you don't see that as, you didn't see it years ago when we started, but now, like, to the work that you're doing with Realm of Caring and all the different efforts to be able to showcase that this truly is healing. And why would it grow in almost every region in like the craziest conditions in a million different strains to help us? I mean, hello, nature has the answer, but that's a huge battle that you guys are up against with pharmaceuticals. So how has that been, like, dealing with, you know, the man that's like, and has the money, you know what I mean? Like, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Well, the great thing for us is that we don't have to deal so much with the, you know, the proverbial man. We just have to deal with we get to deal with the clients, the people who need the help. We get to offer the help where there isn't any. We get to help veterans who, even though the VA states that they can't be removed from federal benefits if they're using cannabis, we know that there is discrimination that takes place in the hospital system, and we don't want to pretend that that doesn't exist. And so we're open door to help anybody. And so that's where, you know, we're lucky because we get that opportunity to offer that support to people who just want to know more information. It's overwhelming out there. And then when it comes to proving that it's a legitimate medicine, we fund our own research because we really truly believe in it. And we don't want to just show it how it can be beneficial for one condition. Right now, we're looking at over 100 listed healthcare conditions on what it could be beneficial for. And yeah, it's just, you know, I think it's going to be a long battle for a long time. I keep saying that we're in the right place at the right time because some of us who are in the space can become jaded and think, oh, well, it's, you know, people know about cannabis now, they know the benefits, but then every day we're reminded when we're talking to people, no, they don't. It's still brand new to people. Even for doctors, it's brand new for understanding our endocannabinoid system. And even for people who, you know, were once incarcerated and now their records have been expunged and they've been released from prison, there's still a stigma attached to what they might have done that got them there in the first place. So making this world a safe space for people to be in, to use medicine and to not be incriminated for things. I'm kind of going off a little bit, but just one thing that I wanted to share that someone said recently. I was on a state level call, and a patient advocate was on the phone, and they've really cracked down in Denver on public consumption. And so he was speaking about using his medicine. He was like, well, I'm at home and my landlord doesn't let me use it, so I'm smoking in my closet as if I'm committing a crime, but I'm a medical patient. And so if this is legal, then I should be treated as I'm using a legal product like any other drug, pharmaceutical drug. So yeah, so I kind of went off a little bit there, but yeah, we still battle with the man in that regard on a policy level, but in our day-to-day work, it's just kind of picking up the pieces of where the man's not doing their job.
Well, you're true. Were you going to say something?
Yeah.
To say she's truly an angel doing that work because, you know, we absolutely need it.
There's so much stigma, you know, and it's weird that we don't realize that we're all a little bit hypnotized to the fact that this is such a bad thing. You know, we see it in movies. We see it in the personification of the person who maybe smokes weed. We see like this character type consistently used in TV and in marketing. And then when you turn on almost any program at all, especially if you ever watch the news or a sporting event, you're going to get tons of commercials for mass marketed pharmaceuticals. And so to even know about the alternative is different. You know, it's difficult to do. It's hard to find. I think, you know, what you're doing is so beautiful because it is an uphill battle. I mean, it is something that you're having to bring to light because of the perception that people have. I want to ask you though, how do you manage your own emotions when you know that that's what you're always going to be up against, and continue to have the faith, continue to have hope? Because there's so many people who are doing beautiful things around the world where they're up on uphill battles, but we all need to be there. You know, this is like
we chose to come here at this time, like you said, the right place at the right time, so we could be those advocates and have the courage to speak up. So
yeah, how do you manage like your self-care and sort of the thoughts that go through your head and to keep that positive attitude? Because even the way that you've already started to phrase words, you can tell that there's a shift in your attitude that you're able to frame it in a really positive light. So how do you keep that?
Oh, thank you. And I think I just really love a challenge. And so it's like, I dare you.
He's a
But
Love
I'm a Sagittarius. So
Okay, there you go. There you go.
it.
but I think that's a lot of it is just the challenge keeps me going. It keeps me motivated, but also just, we have such a close, tight knit community of people. I mean, we've helped, right now, we're currently serving 73,000 people across the globe. And it seems like a lot, but we are so connected to our clients in this community that we serve, and their stories and their fight it really drives me to advocate on behalf of them. And I was on a Senate task force in Colorado this last year, and we got to a Senate hearing, and what happened was the families who were fighting on the Capitol steps 10 years ago were right back in that room again, fighting for their access. And that's where I just thought, like, this is not okay. I'm here so you don't have to be, but yet here you are because you have to be, because we're still fighting the same fight. But it just drives me. It really does.
I think that's so beautiful, because we are really at a place in time where we need people who have that heart and have that courage to be able to show up and serve. And sometimes it can feel daunting, like you're listening to people who are maybe at their 20th drug and X amount of time to live, like staring at that in the face, or like the quality of life is just headed out the window. So that sometimes can, I have psychiatrists in my chair, and I'm like, you need to hang out with normal people sometimes, remind the world that not everyone's just like absolutely batshit crazy. So I think it's really powerful. And as he was asking, like, what's your self-care routine? I see what drives you, but what do you do personally for you on like a personal level that allows you to refill your cup and recharge? Because I know what it takes to hold space for, that level of depth of healing.
I think it's a lot of gratitude. If I can just put it to an example, I spoke once at a conference a couple of years ago, where it was a conference for a neurological disorder that affects mostly young girls that don't live very long into their years, fortunately. And I was pregnant at the time with my baby girl. I didn't know she was going to be a girl at the time, but I was pregnant at the time. And as soon as I got off the call, it was just super emotional, because you have all these parents and they're sharing, just wanting their kiddos to live quality of life in the years that they have with them. And as soon as I get off the call, I got a call from my doctor. My genetic scan came through. My genetic scan, they said it was completely clean. And I had so much, that weird guilt, but then also just so much gratitude. And I think that's really what fills my cup for my kids and my husband, and just making sure that when I'm not working, I'm spending my time, they get my time. And I also say right now I'm giving 100% to my work, but 100% to my life, because it's just my home life, because it's just the season of life that I'm in right now. And I'm just, giving it my all, and, being with them does fill my cup. It is my form of self-care. But if I need time to myself, then maybe I'll go get a massage once a month to work out my, my stress knots in my neck.
I wanted to ask you, how is it that a parent can start having conversations with their kids about this? How do they begin that conversation? What are the sort of the right things to say? Like, how do you even begin that?
For the parents who call in?
Yeah, for the parents who want to have an educated conversation about cannabis to their kids, like what would they say?
So I think for a lot of, it's just recognizing that it's a medicine, just like anything else, first and foremost. And then, for kids who have questions about using it recreationally, it's, just have this open conversations, educate them on about a plant or what its uses are for. And if you're the parent who's using, just keep it out of, just like you would lock a liquor cabinet, just put it on the top shelf in a child-proof case, and make sure it's not within their reach. But then still, you don't have to not tell them as if it's something that's taboo. You can have open discussions about it. And a lot of parents too, so if they have kids who have have had issues with cannabis use in the past, sometimes they'll call and they'll just ask us to educate their kid about it because they just don't have the tools to do it, or they just feel overwhelmed about it, or the kid won't listen to them, right? That's always how it is. They'll listen to somebody else talking to them. But yeah, it's just kind of like reinventing the dare wheel. Like, how do we normalize this instead of stigmatize it?
I think you're right. Education is key because, of course, when I caught my mom smoking weed as a kid, it was very traumatic to me because it was like, oh my God, close the door, get the fuck out of here. Like, what are you doing? You know, so it was a very traumatic, like, whoa, I don't want anything to do with that. If that's what's happening, that's what's going to happen behind the doors. Like, it was very scary to me. But then when I learned that every human cell has a CBD receptor, like that to me was like, it's like we're built for that. It's actually mother's breast milk. Like, so how are we so uneducated? And education had been, if that had been the thing for me, I wouldn't have been so scared or traumatized, or just going off like what Chris was saying, what we're shown in the media, or the stigmatism of lazy or not good enough, or whatever the case may be. We went to the Cannabis Cup. We had the pleasure of it before we even really were introduced into the cannabis world. We just kind of took a leap of faith and randomly went to California to the Cannabis Cup by High Times. And there was a man that was wearing a shirt that said, marijuana, or not marijuana, cannabis is safer. There we go. See, it's programmed. Cannabis is safer than alcohol. And I asked him to stop. I said, can I take your picture? And I'll never forget that moment, because it's just like alcohol, the marketing is thrown so much in our face, yet you now are doing the work to be able to put this in the media and have those conversations with our children and educate us in a way that it is normal. And I just think we need more of you. So how can people volunteer or support the realm of caring, and what all does that provide and offer to support the community?
Well, thank you for asking. And I'm glad that you said the thing about alcohol too, because there's so many parallels we could make, right? I mean, sugar will kill you before cannabis does. And it's just, so, and
Getting
that's
a car will. I mean,
right. Yeah. So yeah, if people want to get involved, I think the best way to volunteer is just time with research. We do have a registry that is ongoing. It's longitudinal. So it's a 2-year snapshot on how people are using or how they're not using cannabis in their daily lives. So literally anybody could take it. Even if you're a non-user, you still serve as a control. So it's still beneficial. But so they can take it as surveys every 3 months. And so if they wanted to do that, they can find that on our website or by contacting our care team. And then also just for volunteering, I think the best thing people can do is just spreading the knowledge that they know, just spreading the education and educating themselves. Hemp as a remedial crop, you know, the hemp as the answer to our cotton woes and our how much water and land and resources, wood materials take up that could be replaced. Yes, exactly. There's just so, and I have so much faith for our next generation because they're just so with it and they have so much education available to them and they really do the research. But I maybe they'll be the generation that will actually make the shift from wood and cotton and concrete to these other resources that hemp can provide. But I mean, yeah, there's so much that we have. There's so much that we have to learn and so much we have to go. And so if you educate yourselves, then you'll feel more empowered to when it comes to voting time and you see that your senator or representative is not cannabis or hemp friendly. Then you can write letters as to, why these patient advocate letters or letters from constituents make such a difference. I don't think people realize the difference that they actually have by just letting their voice be heard and just getting the message out there. And because if we think about our legislators, they do the best they can. There's no way that they can be simply just educated on every topic that they have to make decisions on. So hearing from the constituents, hearing these firsthand stories is going to be the thing that moves the needle for them.
What are you hopeful for that happens in the cannabis industry and how that sort of changes the world? What's like the hope for the future? If you could like paint a picture of what it may look like, what does that look like for you?
I think that first and foremost, it looks like a safe space for people who choose to use this as their medicine. Access is increased and affordability is it's made more affordable. So whether that be that there's an insurance model for cannabis, which would be ideal, because then that means that people who are receiving Social Security or veterans benefits or other federal benefits won't get denied those benefits for using cannabis. Yeah, so I think that's just accessibility, affordability, destigmatized.
Is there anything else that you're working on right now that is lighting you up, that makes you passionate, that's driving you? Because I'm sure you're always looking into new research. What you didn't mention so humbly is that the work that you're doing in-house has actually been peer reviewed and put in journals and put out there as legitimate research. So what are you currently, I'm just curious now, what are you currently working on?
Well, we're working on, actually, we're collaborating with Johns Hopkins University on a grant that was awarded by NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and NIH, National Institute of Health. So they were awarded a grant, and we're collaborating with them on this big research project where we'll be enrolling 10,000 people over the next 5 years to essentially the study that we have currently, where we're observing people use cannabis in their everyday lives in naturalistic settings, you could say. We're going to be replicating that study, so that way this data could be recognized by more individuals. And so from there, we hope to, of course, publish more papers for different ailments and conditions. So as of right now, we've looked at anxiety, depression, epilepsy, overall quality of life. We've also looked at just the qualitative answers that people put in there. So, they put in where they're seeing benefits. That's a free form. They could put in where they're having struggles with using cannabis. So we know that they're having struggles when it comes to the education that's out there, affordability, doctor knowledge. So again, it lets us know that we're on this right path. But yeah, that big project that's coming up, that's a big one. The study's not available yet, but by the end of the year, the first survey should be out, which is very exciting. And then that just lets us help more people, which is our ultimate goal.
Where do you find the most dramatic benefit happens? Is it in a certain age group? Is it with a certain element? Where do you find that, like, there's like repeatable stories where you go, oh my gosh, this stuff really works and or really helps in this specific thing?
Oh gosh, so many. But if I could just wrap it up into a nutshell, I would just say overall quality of life, because it looks different to everybody. And that's what I would choose to say, because cannabis is not a one size fits all approach. It does really require a lot of just really guided support, one-on-one support for someone's specific ailment. Of course, we've seen it repeatedly in research when it comes to seizures, comes to epilepsy, when it comes to depression or mood disorders, sleep. But I would say overall, just improving one's quality of life, that's where we see the shift, because it could show up in a way that you didn't even consider. You might be thinking, I'm going to take this because, well, for myself, I was going to take it because it helped with my anxiety when I had kiddos, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and have an anxiety dream that they're falling down the stairs, and it was repeated night after night. And finally my husband's like, you got to figure this out, because I can't keep waking up to you jolting out of bed. And so I did. And then through that, I found, so not just my sleep, but I found benefits in other areas, just hair growth, things that, like, I lost my, postpartum hair, I lost my hair and it grew back. And so things that to me helped to enhance my own quality of life, and it just could look different to other people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I really think that the work is beautiful that you do. It's really, your story is really inspiring. I think that there's so many people out there who want to be leaders, who want to get started with something. And I love the nonprofit route that you went. Can you speak to the person who's looking to get into the help work that you do? How would they find a nonprofit to work with? How would they pair up with that? Like, how does that journey look to a person who's going like, oh my gosh, I feel called to serve. I want to do something sort of bigger than the typical 9-to-5 jobs. How would someone get started with that?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think there's so many. I was really influenced for nonprofit work when I first took my first social work class in my first year of college, I think. So, and then you're young, you have a bleeding heart, and you're like, I want to solve everything. So And there's a lot of things you can be passionate about. And I think that's one thing too, is that you can be attached to one mission, but you can still have other missions that really light your fire that you want to work for. And so I think it's first just recognizing what your skills are. And then how can you use those skills to benefit a cause? Because it's great to have that passion. It really, really is. But what could you, if you were to start in a new organization or, you know, in a career path that was serving people, what could you bring to that organization, or what could you bring to those people? And I think it's more so like aligning your skills. But then also just maybe starting even as a volunteer. One of our care specialists he was in corporate America, and he was like, I want to help people. So he started as a volunteer. And so, and now he's care team coordinator. And so he stayed, and he was offered a job. And so that happens a lot too. So I also think volunteering with an organization that you're passionate about is also a great way.
I think that's great advice and very important, no matter if it's cannabis or horses or children or whatever the hell you're into, like go show up with those people doing those things, because it totally relights your fire. Now, I'm volunteering myself to be your case study for the everyday usage in the daily life. I think that would be wouldn't that be fun? But no, in all seriousness, one of the things, or one of the resistance that I hear in society is that, but what about addiction or that gateway drug, like we kind of joked about earlier? How do you educate parents on, will my kid get addicted to this? Because I can only imagine that's probably number one question that you guys get all the time.
Absolutely. And I think that first, it's just that building the understanding that THC, cannabis, is just not something that we need to be fearful of, that there is a therapeutic way to dose it that is non-intoxicating, and that, will not cause withdrawal symptoms. And I say that very lightly, withdrawal symptoms, because cannabis doesn't really interact with our brainstem the way that a lot of pharmaceuticals or other hard drugs might, that could cause an addiction. But then also just building the understanding that people are using CBD to alleviate their tobacco addiction or opiate addictions, or alcoholism. And so it's actually a tool that can be used to overcome addiction versus a tool, it's something that causes it. And then also just for, if a teen or a young mind, an individual is getting on, we start with a path of least resistance for pediatrics, unless there's something incredibly chronic, like a brain tumor. We might be looking into other cannabinoids, but a path of least resistance is a CBD. And then offering that guided support, and knowing that we are a free resource for any parent who wants to call and get that guided support, and that it's ongoing. So we're not going to all of a sudden say you have a surprise charge of $20. It's ongoing support as long as you need it. So if you need to increase your kiddo's amount that they're taking, we'll help walk you through that, or give you tools so you can go back to your doctor and you can talk with them about it. Because of course, we're not medical professionals, but we're going to offer the education based in research.
Angels.
It's incredible. It's really incredible work. Yeah. I mean, it's there. I feel so often we make choices in our lives because we don't have all the information. And when we're working on fear-based emotions, a lot of times we jump to the first thing that someone suggests to us. And a lot of times that first thing may be, that may be a sledgehammer where you just need a little bit of a slap or something. It's just we're just really walloping something instead of just sort of giving it the time and care that it needs. I feel like there's so many problems that people have, that as we begin to reduce our stress, as we relax a little bit more. I remember when Britt's grandma was going through cancer treatment, and I was asking her about it, and I feel like this specific topic is really personal to me, because I've worked with and been around enough loved ones who've had big problems. And once you watch a person suffer and watch the things that they try and the things that make a difference, your mind opens up to what the possibilities are of other things. You're like, oh, well, who cares what it is? Who cares how people feel about it? If it works, this person's trying to extend their life. It's like it's a completely different way of looking at something rather than just their recreational side. And so she has cancer, and I'm talking to her, I'm like, how are you feeling? Are you nauseous? Do you like, what are you feeling? And she says, I sleep about 4 hours a week.
Oh.
And I mean, we need sleep. Like our brain, our body is designed for sleep. It's like one of the most healing things that we can possibly do for ourselves. And I told her about sort of like a Rick Simpson's type oil. And I was like, I've read about this. I've heard things about this. I have no idea what it is. I don't know. I'm clueless, but I've read some things. And she said, yeah. Why not? I'll try it. And I came back and saw her later, and I was like, well, what did you think? And the look that she gave on her face, I mean, you thought that I jumped in as a superhero or like told her the winning lotto number. She's like, I have never slept that well in my entire life. I never felt so refreshed and good. And it was that moment where the light bulbs went off in my head. There's things that this can do that maybe either we don't understand or we don't know enough about or people aren't mentioning. And I think it's cheap to grow. It's cheap to have. It's cheap to own. It's cheap. I mean, it's amazing the amount of benefits that can go into something that occurs naturally. And it's just, if you, once you start hearing people's stories like that, for me, not only my heart opened up, I was just like, oh my gosh, the empathy that I felt and the like sort of being there with her, telling me what she's really going through and being vulnerable. It was so heart opening to me. I can only imagine what it's like and the amount of stories that you've heard. I mean, it must be you just walk home being like, oh my gosh, what just happened in my day today?
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on such an important word there, which is empathy. And that's what I think that a lot of our like lawmakers, legislators, policymakers, that they might be lacking when they can't. Can you not imagine? Can you not put yourself in the position of a parent who you're told that your kid has no other options left, but this might offer hope? Can you not put yourself in that position? Or just for a grandmother or yourself, you're told by your doctor, that's it, that's the end of the road for you. So I think that's such a huge, huge piece, is if we just had a little bit more empathy, then we would see, so much more that, I don't know, so many more eyes open, so many more legalization. So much more.
Oh my gosh, my heart. I'm back to the like teary-eyed moment again, just because this is such a beautiful conversation and very well needed. Sometimes looking into those alternative routes seems scary, but it actually is quite freeing, if you will, because they say knowledge is power. And the more you educate yourself, the more empowered choices that you can make that align with what is right for your integrity and your lifestyle and what is right for you. So I just want to say thank you for all the work that you're doing and the courage that it takes to show up and shine your light and be a leader and to be an advocate for people who are looking for that glimmer of hope. We mentioned earlier the elevated life is really essentially boiling down to education and to empower our sovereign self to make those choices for what is true for us. So we always like to end our podcast by asking, what does living an elevated life mean to you, Sasha?
I think it means, and I'm gonna borrow a page from your book because you said courage, and I think that living an elevated life means, and I'm gonna also borrow from Ernest Hemingway, is that courage is grace under pressure. And so to live an elevated life, you just have to take those leaps of faith. You have to be courageous and just go into it head first sometimes.
Ooh, that just lights me up. We're so in sync because in October, we're teaching all about cultivating courage inside of our monthly membership coaching club. So you talked about a massage earlier. That's one of the things that as a hairdresser, a coach, a healer, all the freaking things, I have to get my body right. And I had this intuitive healer one time put her hands on my womb and she said, Britt, you're here to birth courage. And that's always sat with me. And it's been that
gave me chills.
I know if I'm not going to have children, at least I'm gonna birth something good. You know what I mean? Like a beautiful brand and fucking courage in the world. So I just want to thank you for your courage, for your heart, for your empathy, and for the strength that it takes to continue to show up and fight the great fight. We need you. We are so grateful for you. And we have really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for educating our elevators. And we look forward to seeing all the amazing work that you do in this world. I can't wait to look back in 10 years and be like, she was on our podcast. Yeah, holy shit. Like she just changed the world. So I have no doubt that those visions that you hold for yourself and for this community and this new way of connecting back to what is real and what is true. I think we're not going to be surprised, but we're going to be like, holy shit.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. You're incredible too. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We look forward to seeing you guys. Until next time. Peace.